Hi friends, so it's April, which means it's that time of the year again, Autism Awareness Month. If you don't know, autism is a spectrum disorder that affects 1 in 68 children according to the CDC. It is typically categorized as having impairments in social communication or restrictive repetitive behaviors. It's a spectrum disorder, which means it affects everyone differently. I've always heard this saying that says, if you know a child with autism, you know a child with autism. There's an emphasis on the A, because one child with autism is completely different than the next. They all need different strategies and interventions. They're all diagnosed at different times and they all show different types of autism. They're just like snowflakes, each individually unique and special in their own ways. Autism affects every child differently, which is why diagnosing them early is extremely important. Then that gives them better opportunities to use those strategies and skills that they might need to give them those skills that they might lack. And that brings me to why I'm making this video. It is extremely important that we work together to diagnose students with autism earlier rather than later, because the sooner the better. There are many lines of defense for identifying students who could possibly have autism. The first line of defense is the pediatrician. These are the first people that start to look at the child and where they are at their developmental delays or if they're meeting the milestones that they need to meet. In a study completed by the American Academy of Pediatrics, 44% of primary care pediatricians take care of someone with autism, but only 8% of them actually routinely screen for autism. This means that there could be children slipping through and not getting the services that they really need to help them develop to their full potential. This brings us to our second line of defense, teachers. As an early childhood education major, I have had the developmental milestones drilled into my head where this student should be at this time. That's why it's important for teachers to be on the lookout. If we start to notice a child slipping behind or not meeting those milestones, it's our job to say something. We spend 4 to 8 hours every day with a child. We start to notice those things and we can say something. This brings us to our final line of defense, the families. You guys know your children better than anybody else. Us teachers, we can tell you if we notice some things, but we can't tell you to take them to the doctor. That is your job. We can suggest, but in the end, it's your final decision. According to the DSM-5, which is the new diagnosing criteria, there are 2 main categories that they look for whenever diagnosing a child with autism. First, they look at the restrictive repetitive behaviors. Signs of this include difficulties coping with change, and also switching activities could be difficult for them, problems with planning and organization, trouble changing focus of a conversation, and then also repetitive behaviors could be also noted as a sign. The second category that the DSM-5 notes is social communication, which this involves both verbal and nonverbal communication. Signs of this include having trouble with initiating social communication, having that turn-taking conversation, having a very narrowed focus that they can only talk about, also making lasting friendships where they're not always talking about awkward subjects and bringing up things that aren't appropriate for the time. If you notice these signs, have your child screened. Bring them to the school and talk to the counselor and say, hey, I've noticed something different about my child. They're kind of having trouble with the social communication. Or go to the doctor and notice, hey, they're not really where they should be with their behaviors. Again, this is where the phrase, the sooner the better comes in. The sooner that we can identify the child, the sooner that we can get their intervention started. But here's something that's a little tricky. Autism has a regressive factor, which means a child can be typically developing and they'll be making normal progress and they'll be meeting those developmental milestones, and then they stop. They kind of start to backtrack and they start losing those skills that they had previously gained. In a study completed by Catherine Bradley Medical University in South Carolina, Charleston, they found that 21% of children with autism showed a loss of skills. This means that 1 in 5 children with autism show that they have lost some of the skills that they had previously had. In the study, they found that the average age of losing those skills was about 2, but there was no set age. Some of the children would lose it at 6 months, or some would lose it at 7 years. But typically, if you're noticing a loss of skills around the age of 2, that could be a sign that you need to get your child screened. This is why it's extremely important for family members and teachers to notice, hey, they were meeting this skill just a couple months ago, but now they're not able to. And this is where we hit our really important stuff. Early identification. As soon as a child is identified and screened and diagnosed with autism, they can begin those intervention strategies. In a study completed by the University of California, up to 25% of the students in their early identification program actually made it back into the general education classroom full-time and lost their diagnosis. Their study also showed that fewer than 10% of the individuals that were nonverbal before the interventions actually remained nonverbal after. The earlier a child can begin the intervention process, the better, because it takes a while to figure out what skills that they need to focus on, which interventions actually work for them, and then also to implement the interventions. It takes a while. So the earlier, the better. I cannot stress that saying enough. The sooner, the better. Childhood is an amazing time, and we want every child to be able to live it to their full potential. So starting those interventions early can give the child the life that they need. My goal for you this Autism Awareness Month is to spread awareness. Make sure people understand that early intervention and then noticing the signs earlier can extremely help a child. It gives them those opportunities and those resources that they will need. If you gain anything out of this, just remember the saying, the sooner, the better. So shine bright, my friends, and stay unique.